League. Ladies and gentlemen, we talk college football every single Tuesday. It's our guy, John Canzano. He is live in Portland, Oregon. Beautiful Portland. It's all brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. Best selection of pizzas and local Northwest craft beers. You can visit Zeke'sPizza.com. Follow John on Twitter, John Canzano BFT. Read all of his work at JohnCanzano.com. Listen to the radio show, The Bald Faced Truth in Portland, 750 The Game. When are you going to be on TV down there? Why don't you just hit TV up now, too?
I did 10 or 12 years. Thanks for noticing. I did a Sports Sunday show on the NBC affiliate here in Portland every Sunday night. It was fun, but it was downtown Portland at 11:30 at night. You know, I'm not going to say more. I'll just leave that out there.
Oh, so a little rough than what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Well. You know, when you come to your car and somebody's broken in and they've taken their time to take everything out of the car, go through everything, your kid's Play-Doh in the back seat. They've opened the Play-Doh, taken the Play-Doh out. A thorough job, I must say. But that was about it for me.
Yeah, welcome to my neighborhood. It's just at this point, you're bound. You just can't. They don't break the windows yet, but they go through it. They go through. If you leave your door unlocked, they just go through. Yeah, the vampire just walking around late at night. All right, let's go. All things college football. Let's jump into it. Oregon, Ohio State, the game of the century in Eugene. Game day. Will be there. Should be just in a fantastic environment. Your buddy Wilner has had these stats where these teams traveling these time zones haven't done well.
Yeah.
What's the feeling like in Oregon as they're leading up to this game against the Buckeyes?
I think people are a little anxious, but I also think, look, if you are a Duck fan, you've been talking about this game for months. When the minute the schedule came out, this was the game everybody pointed to and talked about because it was a game that was supposed to happen during the pandemic and got wiped out. And so I think there's a lot of excitement. I think you're going to get energy inside Autzen Stadium that's going to be real similar to what the energy was for the Colorado game last year. And that was a bit of an ambush. Now, Colorado was in over its head. We all knew it, and it was a matter of them being exposed. But I kind of wonder, even though Ohio State plays in a huge stadium and they go to the big house, I kind of wonder about the atmosphere at Autzen Stadium and how, 63,000 or so will affect Ohio State, a team that, let's face it, both these teams, Oregon and Ohio State, haven't really played anybody, so we don't really know if they're good, but we're going to find out which one of them is better on Saturday. Should be the largest crowd to ever see a sporting event in the state of Oregon, Puck. How about that? 63,000 is the record. I think they're going to go over it.
Okay, you always see this. How do they go over it? It only holds a certain amount of people. How do you keep going over this number? Wasn't there a game last year where they set the record?
Yeah, they set the record, I think, a few years ago against Arizona State. And Rob Mullins, the athletic director, they sold out the seats. They have now sold out standing room only tickets. I asked him, how many people can you get in there? Because there's this IndyCar race that happened in Portland that drew a cool 63,000, but promoters, Puck, they had no turnstiles. They estimated 63,000. Who knows how many people were at that race out at the raceway? But at Autzen Stadium, you're right. There's a finite amount. And Rob Mullins told me, he said, we'll get as many people in there as the fire marshal will allow us. And so I think they'll push the envelope a little bit. And I think, we've seen them push towards 60,000. I don't think 63,001 is out of the question because I think they're going to want to break the record.
Okay, can they beat them? How do they? Of course they can. Yeah. How do they beat them?
Well, Dillon Gabriel's got to be better. He's the key for me, and he's the biggest question. I didn't think we'd be talking about this after a 5-0 start, but he looked shaky in the red zone. Last week against Michigan State, he threw two picks in the red zone. Week before that, he threw a pick 6 in the red zone against UCLA. He looks like he's pressing when they get in the red zone, and his coaches sound and looked like they were a little bit frustrated with him. It's the first time I've seen that from Dan Lanning. He said after the game, he said, we just took all the decision-making out of it at some point and decided to run the football. And so I thought that was a really interesting comment after the Michigan State win. But Gabriel's got to be better. We know he has it in him. He was at Oklahoma. He beat Texas in a last-second, touchdown pass, 15 seconds on the clock, had a great game against Texas, but he's been in big environments and big games. He just hasn't looked great in the red zone, hasn't looked comfortable in Will Stein's offense, and this is, I think, a byproduct of the transfer portal. 3 schools that he's been to in his college career. He acclimated at Oklahoma, but it's only been a few months at Oregon, and he doesn't look comfortable.
Is this a lack of not using his legs, you think, more in the red zone?
A little bit, because I think that, look, coaches are looking at the season, and if you're Oregon, you're looking at the season and going, okay, there's a potential here you could play 18 games, and so you don't want Dillon Gabriel to break a collarbone in week 4 against Michigan State, and so or even against Boise State. And so I do think that they have dumbed down the playbook a little bit, or gone a little bit vanilla in that respect, and maybe told him, get down unless it's a first down or a touchdown. And so I don't think he's attacking that way either. And you're right. Like on all 3 of the interceptions, he's rolling out of the pocket. He's got a decision to make. And he just makes a bad decision and tries to throw into a window that's too tight. And those are good athletes out there. I mean, Michigan State had good DBs. UCLA's got athletes out in the secondary. And so you make a mistake, try to throw into a window there, and you're going to get an interception. But I'd like to see him run a little bit more, use his legs a little bit more. I also know that you've got Dante Moore and you've got Austin Novosad, 2 really good quarterbacks in that room that are really, offer a different dimension. I think Novosad might be the best passer of the 3, but I think Dillon Gabriel's the key this week. If he's comfortable, Autzen Stadium, at home, I don't know if either one of these teams is really great. They both look pretty good. I think Oregon can win this game, Puck, if they play clean.
You buy into this time zone theory from your buddy Wilner. I mean, I look at Ohio State. They've given up 34 points total this year.
Yeah.
Now, you can make an argument. Have they played anybody? Well, Michigan State, Iowa, at least in the Big Ten. Other than that, no one. Marshall, Western Michigan, Akron. So I mean, this is clearly the best opponent that Oregon's going to face. Don't know how dynamic they are at the quarterback position, but it's old school football, right? Yeah. They're going to run the ball. And they're going to play great defense. But do you think they're affected by this travel?
I think they are. I think all the teams are. I think even Miami was affected going to Berkeley. I think it's probably explains a little bit why they looked the way they did in the early parts of that game. And then, they come roaring back. And, we're all going, well, it's just a football game and they're on a charter. Yeah. But you're talking about not just a road game. You're talking about a road game across multiple time zones, body clock issues with kickoffs. I think it's really interesting that this has been positioned as a 4:30 kickoff. I think that doesn't kill Ohio State. If it was a 7 o'clock kickoff or late game, like, Miami had to play at Cal, maybe that's a different story. But even the teams that are playing competitively in these games they don't look good. They don't look great. Nobody's looked great going across the country. So I do think that's a factor. This game, we're in Columbus. I'd probably pick Ohio State. I'll make my official pick Thursday, but I'm leaning towards the Ducks because I'm looking at Ohio State going, who did they beat? I'm looking at Oregon going, who did they beat? We don't really know, Puck. And all I know is that Oregon's defense, their front 7, looked really good and dominant against Michigan State. I compared the first half stats because that's where you got to look if you're looking at kind of a blowout game. Oregon was a little better, a little more dominant in the first half against Michigan State.
Okay, but for that Michigan State game, that you could look at what Oregon did defensively against Idaho.
Yeah.
And they couldn't stop him on the ground. Boise State, no one's been able to stop that guy. And then, in comes a rushing attack, for Ohio State that's averaging 6.2 yards a carry on the ground.
The coaching edge is going to Ohio State in this game. I think they've got Chip Kelly, they've got Ryan Day, they've got some state secrets over there. They took the running backs coach Lockwood and, took him from Oregon. So I think if you're looking at the coaching matchup, tip the cap to Ohio State. But I'm still coming back to, last week was the first time I thought Oregon's offensive line looked dominant. And the defensive line was very disruptive. It was the first time I thought they could beat Ohio State. Now, it may be fool's gold, maybe Michigan State on a Friday night traveling across the country. Maybe they don't give their best punch. But I'm leaning towards a really close game played in the 20s. I think it's something like 27-25, 27-24, 28-27, something like that with these two teams. I think it's going to be it'll be a rematch in the Big Ten championship game. And, if you're buying the coaching theory, you would say that, Oregon has its best chance to get Ohio State early rather than late.
Let's flip it over to Washington. Your takeaway from their victory against Michigan. You
mentioned it. You said must win.
They're printing up T-shirts, by the way, that say we should be 6-0. I just want to pass them on.
Hey, look, this is a great win for Jedd Fisch early in his tenure. It's exactly what they needed in the first 5-6 games of the season because the later part of the schedule, we've talked about it. It gets brutal. So this this was a really opportunistic, event for Washington, and I think one that they can sort of hang their hat on here in the first half of the season, because it didn't go like they wanted it to. The game at Rutgers was terrible. They lose the Apple Cup. There were a lot of, self-inflicted wounds. So it was nice to see, a team that has had some things go against it figure some things out. That said, I still think there's problems there. I think it says as much about Michigan and the travel as it did Washington. But if you're Washington, you take that W and you spin into the next week. And if you're Washington State, you also kind of go, hey, that's helpful to our cause as well, because you're watching Texas Tech and you're watching Washington go out into the world and do some work for you.
Yeah, I could see Texas Tech go ahead and win every one of their remaining games for Washington. I hope they lose all of them.
Well, it's a
But I understand the thought behind it. The more they win, it makes your victory look better.
Yeah, they do good. You look good. So, but Washington's limited, especially on offense. I mean, you really look at them, and I think they're going to run into some problems later in the year. I watched the Penn State UCLA game, for example, and I have a hard time seeing Washington get to 15 points against Penn State's defense. I just think they're going to suffocate them. I mean, I think Jedd Fisch knows better than anybody. He's an offensive coach. He's looking at what he has, and he's just trying to MacGyver it through the rest of this season. Now, are there 8 wins out there? Are there 9 wins out there for Washington? Sure, if they play lights out, there's some opportunities there for the Huskies. But there are some games where I'm just going, that's a loss, that's a loss. But as we have figured out, Puck, in 5-6 weeks here, do we really know? Like, is USC good or not? Like, there's some questions still about some of these opponents that are remaining on the schedule. So all you can do is handle the team in front of you and try to salvage this year. This is a building year for Jedd Fisch.
This is why this year's the 12-team playoff is going to be fast. It's going to be such a runaway success because there are no dominant teams.
Yeah,
you just saw Alabama get knocked off by Vanderbilt. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Can we have a laugh about that? Can we just have a laugh about
coming up later? I'm going to play that rant on Feinbaum's show. I can't wait. I just, I was going to ask you about DeBoer. I mean, this is what you signed up for. And this is the problem with going into that school.
Yeah.
And it's not to say he didn't earn it. He did earn it. He's an unbelievable coach. He's one of the top 5 coaches, top 3 coaches in college football. And he's proven it year in and year out. But you can't follow this guy. You are in a no-win situation there.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter if you win multiple championships there. They won't care. You'll never be Nick Saban. And he's always going to be now put up towards Nick Saban. And now he just had one of the worst losses in school history. And it completely wipes away what they did 2 weeks ago against Georgia.
Yeah, they're feeling pretty good. It's Frank Sinatra Jr. I mean, I remember when Marvis Frazier got into the boxing ring and we thought, oh, that's Joe Frazier's kid. And then we went, you can't do that. Go another direction, go another path. And for Kalen DeBoer, I think, look, we get the ambition of it. It's Alabama. Maybe there was no tie to Washington. But I have to think Husky fans were feeling pretty good about beating Michigan and watching Kalen DeBoer faceplant.
I mean, the common thing, at least out here, was social media wise, hearing people talk was see Jedd Fisch, when he actually concentrates on the game, can beat Michigan. Because the thought was Kalen DeBoer, which is I don't agree with. I think it's complete BS. Like Kalen DeBoer, I guarantee was fully all in on the national championship.
Yeah,
you can multitask and interview at the same time. It can be done.
Yeah, winning that would be that's a career tentpole moment for winning that game. He's not gonna half bake that game. But here's the other thing about the Pac-12 teams, or let's just say the teams in the Pacific time zone that have played for the national championship. Right? You go back to Oregon in 2011 BCS title game, Oregon in 2015, Washington last year. 3 teams. And they played what? They played Auburn, they played Ohio State, and they played Michigan. The rushing totals for those 3 games, the disparity for the bigger, more physical teams not in the Pacific time zone was 853 to 253 combined in those 3 games. You just got pushed around. Michigan pushed Washington around. Auburn and Ohio State pushed Oregon around. It's why the SEC's kind of cornered the market on giant defensive tackles. And, Mike Leach said it when he was down at Mississippi State. I said, what's the biggest difference in the SEC? And he said, they all have 2 or 3 guys that are going to play D tackle in the NFL. And in the Pac-12, we didn't. Maybe Oregon had one and USC had one. So,
the one thing that I think, along those lines that I think is in Washington's favor is they take on Iowa. And again, that's going to be a 9 a.m. kickoff for them, at least for their body clock, for coming up this week. I think the one thing it has going for them is, like, they have a Big Ten running back in Jonah Coleman.
Yeah, they do.
Not many people have that.
And then Iowa's a little bit limited offensively. And that plays right into what Washington is doing, right? Washington and Michigan, that game was, I picked Michigan to win it, but I thought it was a real close game in the 20s. Like, we could all kind of see the trend of that game. Same thing is happening with this Iowa game. And there are a couple opportunities later in the year. It's like I look at UCLA's schedule, Puck. They have very few opportunities to win games because they can't get to 14 points. They can't get to 15. And so I think for Washington, at least Jedd Fisch is getting them into the 20s. And, he knows what he needs to do. He needs to go out. They need to reload at the receiver position. They need to be a little better on the offensive line. He needs to get his guys in there. So, it's like I watched Johnathan Smith at Michigan State. It was just, they're so overmatched right now. It's not even about coaching at that point.
Was Johnathan Smith asked in the post game at all about the point spread?
I don't know if he was, because I didn't go into his post game presser, but I can tell you over the years that he was probably aware of the spread. I think most coaches are, and I've had Johnathan Smith comment to me before. I do my weekly picks, right? Yeah. And he was a subscriber. Dan Lanning's a subscriber. These guys
shout out those guys. They're supporting JohnCanzano.com. And you can be a subscriber too. Just go to JohnCanzano.com and sign up.
Greg Sankey's a subscriber. Tony
Come on, really?
Come on, I'll name drop.
Jeez, you name drop all these people. This is great.
But here's the deal. Like, I had Johnathan Smith one time. I picked Oregon State to upset USC like 2-3 years ago at the Coliseum. It's a big upset over a ranked team. You could kind of see it coming. Oregon State was good. Nobody knew it. Right? They were physical. They were running the ball. It was like week 5. They go to the Coliseum. It's their game, and USC's going, here comes Oregon State. They're not up for that game. So I picked Oregon State to win, and Johnathan Smith, after the game, walks by me, and he points at the scoreboard, and he goes, yeah, you only had us by 1 point. So it tells me he was looking at my picks, right? Then another week.
Was it the Civil War? You told this story to me about the Civil War, didn't you?
Yeah, he knew the point spread before the game. He knew that it had moved. He came over to me on the sideline, and the game it was the Civil War 2 years ago, and the spread had gone from Oregon being a favorite by a couple points. Now all of a sudden Oregon State was a favorite. Johnathan Smith comes out of the locker room and sees me. He walks over to me on the sideline, and he said, hey, why did the spread move? He wanted to know like what injury there was Nix not playing? And it turned out Kenny Dillingham had accepted the job at Arizona State. And so Johnathan knows the spreads. Before I picked Oregon State to win games but not cover, and he'll make a comment to me, hey, you picked us, but you didn't have us covering. Now, I don't think that means he's gambling, but I think it means he's aware of the spread.
I was going to ask you, which app does he use, John, you think? Does DraftKings, FanDuel, or you have your own there in Oregon, right?
We have
the Oregon State Lottery.
Yeah, we have DraftKings now. The state lottery.
What's his alias? Can you find out what his alias on DraftKings is?
I don't think he's gambling. Okay, I don't think it's a Pete Rose.
I know what it is. It's at Goodwill Beaver.
That people are asking, did he stop by Goodwill after the Michigan State loss to Oregon?
Well,
dump some stuff.
I agree with you. He's probably not betting on it. Okay, but I do think. And you and I, was full disclosure, we texted about this. I think it does raise a red flag a little bit for people that if there was a group that would oversee this for college football, I think it would raise a red flag to go, yeah, why is he kicking a field goal there?
But did you see Tosh Lapoy, the defensive coordinator at Oregon, as they were lining up for the field goal?
I didn't.
Okay,
know.
He was way into it too, and so the camera goes to him on the sideline
because Lapoy had Oregon in the points.
And anybody who could read lips knows that he was going miss right as the ball was in the air. Okay, so like anybody who's got a stake in the game.
So Lapoy's over there on the sideline going in-game betting, bet.
But Oregon. But I think they all know that. Only giving up 7 versus giving up 10 or whatever you're giving up in the game looks better.
Okay.
They're going to use that stuff to recruit. It'll be held up against them. I think
they're going to use the point spreads in recruiting.
But I think
we're 44-1 against the spread. Come to Oregon.
But if you go into let's just say you go into a situation where you're recruiting, you're up against Michigan State for a recruit, and
sure.
and let's just say it was a shutout situation. He kicks a meaningless field goal to avoid a shutout. It might just look better or sound better than having the other coach be like, "Hey, we beat him 45-zip." I don't know.
I want you to. You're talking to Dan Lanning on Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Can you ask him that? Does he know the point spread?
I'll ask him. I bet he's
I'm
aware.
just curious. Who would answer it? Maybe Lanning won't, because I'm not. He's got bigger questions to answer than, hey, do you know the point spread? He's getting ready for the Buckeyes.
I'll go even further.
Okay. Do you bet on the games, Dan?
I had Johnathan Smith a couple years ago. The point spreads are paywalled on the website. And Johnathan Smith said, "Oh, you're paywalling the point spreads." And
this guy's got a problem, John. What are you going to do? A deep dive in Johnathan Smith? Is Pete Rose?
No, I don't think he's Pete Rose. But I do know they read everything. They've got a guy on every staff who is out there listening to every podcast, reading all the people that they think are in on the team or know things that are going on.
Disrespect.
They're looking for some little angle that might not exist. Yeah. I had even Dan Lanning a couple of years ago in front of a Civil War, his first Civil War game. He says, "You've seen a lot of Oregon State. What do you think?" I mean, he's not looking for me to give a deep scout on their 13 personnel, but I think he was looking for any bit of intel that he could get on what that game meant to Oregon State or what was going on. I don't think it's unusual. Bill Rabinowitz, who works at the Columbus Dispatch, he came on my show yesterday. I'm doing a podcast with him. I guarantee you Oregon's going to listen to both and Ohio State's going to listen to both.
It reminds me, you always play the disrespect card, right?
Yes.
Before and after a game. It's Jim and I were discussing yesterday. I laughed, and not because he's not wrong, but like Jonah Coleman after the game is screaming into a camera, "No one believed in us. No one gave us a shot." And I'm like, you were favored to win the game. But Vegas did.
Yeah.
Vegas has a lot of money tied up in these games, and they predicted that you were going to win the game.
You know what, Puck? When you went out on your own, no one believed in you. And when I went out on my own, no one believed in you. Look at us now.
And they still don't.
Look at us now.
Look at us now. There was
realignment. Let's talk about realignment for a second.
Realignment, because boy, it's on the back burner. Nothing's happened. Since Gonzaga? What's going on with realignment talk? I love realignment.
Yeah, like 3 of the 4 Sundays in the last 4 Sundays, 3 of the last 4. We've had teams added to the Pac-12. And so Sunday came, and I was kind of like, okay, who are they adding? And nothing happens, right? So I am told that they are working right now to get they're hiring their media consultant. They're not going to go with the same outfit that they used, that George Kliavkoff used, no doubt.
Good, wise.
Yeah. So, but they're hiring their consultant. They're going to market. It could be fast if they use a traditional partner like ESPN or Fox. Could take more time if there's a streamer involved. It gets more complicated if you get new partners. It's more complicated if you have multiple partners. Given that there's a basketball element here, I kind of wondered, would they try to kind of a la carte the basketball? Would they try to split it out and give basketball rights to one entity and maybe football to another? Because now you're selling Gonzaga and the brand of Gonzaga. Maybe ESPN or Turner would be involved in that kind of discussion. But I'm told that it would be really surprising if they split them. So they're looking for somebody who, or some combination. And the cool thing is, I think the advantageous thing is that they don't have any competition in the marketplace right now. And so they're the only ones in line, and they're about to go to rights. And so it could be a matter of just a few weeks. It could take a month or 2. I don't expect it to stretch beyond, when we start seeing the conference championship games and that, because they've got to model too. They've got to ask these media partners, hey, present us a model that includes UNLV. Present us a model that includes Memphis and Tulane in South Florida. Present us a model that includes Sacramento State. Present us a model that includes fill in the blank of Pac-12 school that departed. They may have some real creative models here and approach, future members, because they've got to add one more school that plays all sports. So I expect that, they'll say, hey, model Cal for us, just so we can put something in front of Cal, even though it would be really hard for them to get out of their grant of right.
That Sac State's making a real push, isn't it?
Yeah, they are. And a little bit like SMU trying to get into the ACC. Remember that? Like,
yeah.
I talked to the boss hogs down at SMU with the
wow, Johnny, we got so much goddamn money, John. It coming out our asses.
It was so funny being on the phone with those guys. They're all in the petroleum business one way or another.
Yeah, they
and,
are.
You know, some of them are brokers, some of them are actually getting their hands dirty, but they're all in the business. One of the guys told me, I said, you know, what about the exit fees in the American? You know, like it could be $25 million. And he said, hasta la vista, baby. Send us the bill. You know, so.
But I just envision every one of those guys. It's two characters that come to mind. Okay, it's Boss Hog from Dukes, and then it's Garrity. Do you ever watch Friday Night Lights, the TV show? Yeah. Buddy Garrity. Yeah. Those are the two guys. I just think they're cigars and talking about oil and all that. Are you a Yellowstone fan, by the way?
I love Yellowstone. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you seen the new series that guy that created Yellowstone's coming out with?
Yet. No.
It's all about the oil business.
Okay.
In Texas. And Billy Bob Thornton's the main character.
Oh, it'll be great.
It's gonna be unbelievable. It's gonna be great. The lawsuit, the $1 billion, $2.7 billion. They're going ahead with it, right? They're going to pay these athletes. What does this mean for college athletics, college football?
It means that you're going to see two things. Like someone's got to pay the bill, right? And it's not going to be your football program. They're not going to start cutting scholarships or defunding football. Because, you know, as one AD put it to me, you know, you've got, if your athletic department's a business, about 16 of the 18 locations are not profitable, right? So you got football and men's basketball making money. So you're going to see all the resources pointed there. Title IX compliancy is going to make you continue to fund your women's sports. But you're going to see, you know, things like, you know, the men's rowing team and gymnastics or track and field. You're going to start to see, hey, no more scholarships there. I mean, we're already seeing that at some of the major schools that are saying, you know, Ohio State's no longer going to fund this or Georgia's no longer going to fund that. And you're going to see that because they have to pay for it somewhere and it's not coming from football. You're also going to have, you know, it's essentially kind of an opt-in situation. Like, and how deep do you want your pockets to be? Can you afford to go all the way in? So I do think you're going to see some tough decisions made by some Power 4 schools or maybe some of those on the bubble. Are you going full throttle or not? Also, this whole idea that there could be a super league that comes in behind it, you know, funded by private equity, that's out there as well. I think this is just getting started, Puck. I think, you know, anybody who tells you they know what it's going to look like is lying to you because it could turn into the NFL light. It could just be the Big Ten and the SEC running away with it. Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are going to meet this week. Got lawmakers, including one in the state of Washington, who told me that, you know, Congress is looking at this. Like, could there be antitrust violations? You know, if you try to lock and secure and guarantee automatic bids for the Big Ten and the SEC, is that an antitrust violation? So I think a lot of saber rattling going on out there too.
What is preventing college football from just having a commissioner, a czar?
I think two things. One, it's really complicated to split it away from the other sports. As much as we can all say it or Chip Kelly can say it, there are some complications here, and some of it involves Title IX and how do you separate the funding of one from the other. But it could be done. But the ADs, when I bring it up, they kind of look at me like, you know, come on. You guys don't understand how difficult this would be to split it away. So that's one piece. Like, how do you split it away? But I think what's really stopping it is the Big Ten and the SEC seem to have an allergy to it because they already have a super conference, Puck. It's them. It's the two of them. And so, you know, the illusion of the autonomous four, the Power Four, is still out there. It's why I think the Big 12 and the ACC and the Pac-12 need to stay shoulder to shoulder to shoulder right now because there is strength in numbers. But if Greg Sankey wanted to be czar of college football, he could be czar of college football tomorrow. But he's got a more powerful and better job in the SEC right now. And so he doesn't have to deal with the whole ecosystem. He's just dealing with his university presidents. So I think that's the biggest pushback. I would love to see it. I think Sankey be the right guy. He's smart, knows what he's doing. But that would take, you know, the Big Ten and the SEC going, hey, look, this isn't great for us, but we're going to acknowledge that this is great for the sport. We're going to step back a little bit.
What do you make of the Cougs traveling to Ole Miss next year? Have you ever been?
Yeah, I haven't been to Ole Miss. No, I've been to Mississippi State. So
I've heard Oxford is unbelievable.
This is a Dave Brown thing, and for people who don't know Dave Brown, he's the scheduling guru at Gridiron Football, who does all of the scheduling. Right? He is the savant behind the scenes. I've talked with him a couple times. He literally, I've written about him. He literally knows off the top of his head who has open dates like 2 years from now and what weeks, and he's a freak that way. But his fingerprints are all over this because I reached out to him to try to figure out, like, how are Oregon State and Washington State going to do 2025? And he kind of referred me back to the Pac-12, but I could tell he was working on it. I found out later he's been hired by the Pac-12. He is consulting with the Pac-12. He's helping them put together their 2025 schedule. So all of a sudden, what did you see? You saw Wake Forest back out of a game against Ole Miss. Red flag went off. Oregon State adds Wake Forest. All of a sudden, Washington State's playing Ole Miss. It's a twofer. You got 2 out of 1, right? It's the same deal that they did with this Texas Tech game this year. Texas Tech backed out of the Oregon game, went to Washington State. Oregon State played Oregon. That's a Dave Brown special. I mean, his fingerprints are all over this thing.
Cougs got a great schedule next year. They're at Ole Miss, at Virginia. Two great environments to go to.
And when you start to think about, like, you look, the Mountain West was trying to extort him for $30 million to play bunch of games. Like, as one of the Pac-12 ADs told me, hey, we can buy the games for cheaper than that. Like, the biggest buy this year, I think, in college football, Alabama's paying like $1.7 million for a game. But you talk about trying to get your schedule put together, get 12 football games. $30 million was way too much money for that. Should have been closer to like maybe $7 million. And so I think they did a good thing in hiring the guy who knows how to put schedules together, and he's found a bunch of teams that are willing to do the 2-for-1s. And so I think Oregon State's happy with where they're going in 25, and I think Washington State as well.
I get 2 quick things for you, then we'll cut you loose. Yeah. Okay. For the Cougs, didn't play last week. We have seen this. A familiar storyline has developed the last few years with Jake Dickert. They get off to these good starts, and then they crumble. He's off to a 4-1 start. At Fresno State, home against Hawaii, at San Diego State, Utah State at home, at New Mexico, before they face Oregon State on November 23rd. Next 5 games. Their record when they play the Beavs is going to be what?
I think they're still going to have 1 loss. I believe in this team. I get it. Dickert, his team, I call it a swoon, right? He swoons mid-season. I don't see it this year. Fresno State, Bulldog Stadium's a tough place to play, but they're not going to lose that game. It's just going to be closer than it should be. I like John Mateer. I like the running game. I think Dickert is focused. Love what he said on his show with you last week. Talked about being there for 10 years and that, he sounded like a guy who's super committed and understands it. This is a big year. And I think for Washington State and Oregon State, neither one of these programs could afford to disappear. So you cannot afford a swoon against Fresno State and who else? New Mexico and Utah State and San Jose State. Oregon State's playing San Jose State. You've got to beat these teams because you didn't invite these teams into your conference except for Fresno State. But, this is a game they should win. Oregon State has to go to Boise later in the year. That's not a W.
All right, what's your record right now betting wise?
I'm at about 58%. I was 6 last week. It was a bad week.
Okay, it's still pretty good. I know your picks come out on Thursday or Friday.
Thursday morning. Yeah.
This is where Johnathan Smith and other coaches have the paywall to get through for the picks. This is where Smith is, he's sweating bullets, money down.
I don't think he's doing that. I know
you're not saying that.
I think he's got a guy. I think he's got a guy who's looking at it and going, hey, the point spread moved by 2 points. And they're going, who's not going to play? I think it's a coaching thing, Puck. Unlike Pete Rose, who, by the way, should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, of course
more
he
hits
should be
than anybody.
Good Lord.
It's okay to put a scumbag in the Hall of Fame. They've done it before. I have a vote. He's not going to appear on the ballot. I'd vote for him. I voted for Barry Bonds. He did bad things too. They let him play. It's supposed to be a museum. All right, that's my rant.
Okay, so give me 1 pick this week. Who do you like? For people who want to gamble, talking to you, Johnathan. For people who want to put some money down on a game, who do you like this week? Give us one.
Who's San Jose State playing? San Jose State is a 1.5 point favorite against you. Who is they playing? Come on.
I'm trying to pull it up.
Come on.
San Jose State. They are favored by 1.5 over Colorado State.
They're going to win that game by more than 1.5.
Now, San Jose State's a good football
San
team.
Jose State's fearless. Colorado State, I don't think they have the offense to run away with that game, even though they're at home. I like San Jose State to win that game by a field goal or more. That is my 5-star blue plate special, whatever pick.
It's your Canzano bald head lock of the week.
Yeah, I looked at that one. There was another one in the Mountain West that jumped out at me as well, but I can't remember. I'll look for it Thursday.
All right, squeeze that gambling question into landing if you can.
So how do you want me to?
I'm going to ask Dickert next time.
It's not going to be my first question, okay? But it'll be
right out of the bat. Hey, the line's 3.5. Which way you betting, Dan?
I'll slip it in late. You know, he always asks me a question too, which is
he does.
You should have Dickert do that with you.
Okay.
Put him in the spot. Say, hey, look, at the end of the interview, I always go to landing and I go, okay, ask me a question. So, the last time he said to me, hey, I bet, we always talk about like, what are the coaches saying on the headsets? He said to me, how do you concentrate on doing a radio show when you've got the earphones on and you got a producer in your ear and they're telling you 60 seconds or you need to go to commercial break or whatnot? And, he asked me a question about that. So there you go. I like what's on his mind.
Okay. I'm going to do that. He what he wants to do? He wants to do this. I don't know if Dickert was joking, but that's what he wants to do. Because he's done, like with that 10 years, he's done. He says he's done coaching. He's out.
Well,
he's out.
I'm the same way. 10 years for me. That's it. I'm the same way.
He'll be a lifer. You're a lifer.
No, I won't be. I won't be that old guy. All respect to that old guy. Okay. I love old people.
Jim Moore?
I have respect for old people. I am not going to be that old guy hanging around the press box so people go, what is he doing here?
Get out.
I will not be there. You know what I'll be? I'll be at like a Big Sky Conference football game watching true college football, being played.
I envision, you know what I envision you doing?
What?
Like teaching high school, and you're like a high school baseball coach.
I've coached high school baseball. I did.
Maybe assistant?
I was an assistant on a varsity team after I graduated college because and it was fun. It was fun. I tried teaching, Puck. I was in a classroom for about a year, and I knew my first day of school is a horrible story. It's a horrible story. I don't know if it's safe for air, but my first day of school at my old high school. So I go back to my high school, and I'm teaching English and Spanish at my old high school, and I'm coaching football and baseball. Okay. First day of class, kid in between periods got stabbed and killed right in front of me. Not to bring you down, but it was not what I remembered high school being like. It was gangs. It was awful. And it broke my heart because, you go to school. What's the worst thing that happened to one of us at school when we were kids? Like somebody get in a fight or, your friend, you have a friendship that's not going well, but
got too high at lunch. Yeah.
I don't know, but it was heart-wrenching to watch that. And so I look at what teachers are doing in schools today, public schools especially. What are they doing? They're parenting, they're social worker, they're psychologists, they're doing, they're doing it all in addition to teaching. So I have too much respect for teachers for me to pretend that I could be one. So I got out of that pretty quick.
I got an idea. You and Jay Smith start a gambling podcast.
You won't stop with this. Somebody's gonna take it out of context.
I know.
Put it out there.
That's why I keep
next
doing
to John Gruden's Chucky madness that's going on the internet right now, and then people are gonna be like, "Oh, did you hear what he said?"
I'm gonna ask Dickert about it next time. I think Dickert comes on in a week or two.
I guarantee you, if they're honest, they all know the spreads. I mean, come on.
I'll get Soft to ask Fish about it.
Yeah.
And then Fish will somehow turn it back into, my time's in the NFL.
I remember one time I told Fish.
Always back to the NFL.
One time I told Fish, he took a hiatus from college football, because he went to the NFL. Yep. I called it a hiatus. Yeah. And he said, well, I don't know if I would call working for Bill Belichick going on a hiatus. So I just
Belichick's everywhere.
I know.
He's got Husky gear on left and right. When Fish leaves, Belichick may be the new head coach of the Huskies.
Yeah. Well, look, hey, that would be interesting. Not boring.
Oh, that would be amazing theater. All right.
All right, man.
Way too much of your time. Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you, man.
There he is, John Canzano, Bald-Faced Truth, joins us every single Tuesday talking college football in case you missed it and want to rewatch it. It'll be up on YouTube later. You can also listen to it Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. And, of course, one-stop shop, pucksports.com.